Webinars are one of my favorite ways to spark growth for B2B and professional service firms. And that is because they are super multifunctional and they tend to create a really big impact with prospects and existing customers alike. So let's talk a little bit about the impact that webinars could have on your organization alongside how to build a strategy to really do them well. I'm Courtney Gulster. I'm a digital marketing expert. I work with professional service firms, financial firms, community banks, and health tech companies to spark growth in the sales process by leveraging digital marketing better. So, webinars have not always been something that I have loved. I have talked about this before that they're not something that have been high on my priority list for clients until about 18 months ago. And I think that shift came during COVID where people weren't seeing each other face to face. Webinars really had their heyday in the early 2010s. And then they kind of decreased in popularity, mostly because the technology wasn't amazing and they were overused and just like they just never picked up the steam that they could have until COVID, until everybody was separated. And then all of a sudden they became a thing again. And now we're seeing that when they're used in the right way, they're really creating the right impact for our clients. And that's because they're very versatile. So, yes, a webinar takes a lot of effort to put together, but it also, as you can see, my Doberman is officing with me today. He does every day. I don't know why I'm saying today, but he busted into my office and I can't keep him out, but I can keep him in. So that's what we're doing since my kids are home also. But webinars they do take a lot of effort to put together as a single solution, but they can be split up and multi-purposed and they can be repurposed in so many different ways that they become like a visibility machine for your organization. And on top of that, they're great for building credibility with people that are already engaged with you, like prospects, or for cross-selling existing customers on different services. So they can be a great tool for a lot of different things. And they can also be a great way just to get that social media content that you need, because oftentimes we can take that long form webinar and slice and dice it up into just the best clips so that they can be used as little snippets on LinkedIn. And if you want to see an example of that, go check out my LinkedIn profile where I take all of my videos and slice and dice them for digestible content. That's something that we also do for clients. And so it's become a really powerful way to get things done while creating an impact. I'm going to do a couple of videos this week on this topic. So this first one is going to be just creating the strategy and figuring out what type of webinar content you want to create. And then we'll dive into like how to multi-purpose it and what tools we use for multi-purposing content. So the first thing that you need to think about is my favorite word. If you watch my videos, you know what's about to come out of my mouth. It is consistency. Webinars cannot be effective as a one and done concept. They need to be part of your overall strategy for the year. I encourage our clients to set up some sort of combination video webinar strategy because you don't want to burn your audience out by hosting too many webinars. But you also don't want to go make them so infrequent that you're uncomfortable or they're not going to show up because they don't understand the value that you provide in your webinar. So it's really important to establish kind of that frequency that is going to work best for you. For our clients that do this well, what I have found to work is kind of an alternating schedule. So one month we focus on kind of a solo video concept that's not going to release as a webinar. It's just going to release as a video, and we do again slice and dice those as well for LinkedIn content. And then the next month we're going to do a webinar. Part of that is the frequency issue. Like if we released a webinar every single month, that's all that our content would be. We'd have a lot of email going out just to support the webinar. We would have a lot of time wrapped up in hosting and bringing partners in and things like that. The other piece of that is just kind of creating that balance with your content is really important. So that's the frequency or flow that's really worked well for a lot of our clients in different industries. Of course, you can modify that to be what works best for you. I do have certain clients that work in kind of like seasonal cycles as well. So in particular, I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Chris Kelly at Asset HR, who partners with a law firm that hosts compliance webinars for his clients. And they do those in short bursts throughout the year. So that's a spring and a fall series. Every once in a while, if there's something relevant, they'll throw an extra one in there. But they set those up as a series of webinars instead of setting them up as individual webinars. It's a little bit more of an advanced strategy, but it's really effective for them because all of the information is content or information that their audience really needs because it's about compliance and regulatory changes. So their situation is a little bit different. And if you fall into that category where your industry does have a lot of legislation at certain points throughout the year that would affect your customers or affect your prospects, or if you have other industry changes that really impact the way that your clients and prospects do business, that might be a better approach. You can always email me. I'm happy to kind of assess your situation and give you some advice if that's helpful to you. My contact information is below. So consistency, again, is really important, as it is with every marketing tactic that you want to be successful. In fact, the more consistent you are in implementing the tactics in front of you, the tactics on your list, the fewer tactics you need to implement. So just always keep that in mind. Whenever I say consistency, it's all about creating a really streamlined and successful marketing program that's tied into your sales process. So the kind of next piece of this is thinking about what you're going to cover. I love kind of coming up with a brain dump. And I really recommend that you do this with your sales team because they're the ones that are out there having conversations with prospects. They're the ones that are hearing the challenges that those prospects are facing. And that's the content that you really want to create these webinars around because that's what's going to draw people in to listen, especially if you're using this as a sales tactic. If you're using this as a customer nurturing tactic, talk to your customer service reps because they are the ones that are fielding the FAQs. They're having those day-to-day interactions with people and they're going to tell you what people want to know or what challenges they're facing. And then you can either bring in a solution or show them a solution that you already have. That also helps you frame your marketing around what they want. So if they're having a particular challenge, you want to speak to that challenge with how you're positioning your webinar. So are you having a problem with X, Y, or Z? Here are 3 solutions that we're going to cover on this webinar on this date. It's really important that you have that information and knowledge to share, and then you use that in your marketing. And maybe that's not just for your webinar plan, but also for the other content you're creating for blogs, for drip campaigns, and things like that. So making a list, doing that brain dump is really helpful, and then kind of mapping that out because for a lot of businesses, your customers have a cycle throughout the year of challenges that they have. So if you can take kind of that brain dump of challenges and map that out on a monthly basis to give you a better idea of what type of content you should be creating at what time of the year, or knowing that they're going to have this challenge coming up and creating that content a little bit further in advance of them actually encountering that particular issue, you can make your webinar strategy a lot more successful. In some industries, that's not possible. You don't know what's coming down the pipeline, or you're just trying to speak to various challenges that customers have on an ongoing basis in the market. So you can't be quite so strategic with the timing of your webinars, and that's okay. So thinking about what you should cover kind of leads me into the next bullet point, which is who should you invite? For a lot of people that we work with, it's easier to do webinars. Like solo webinars are fine, but they're not as engaging typically. And they tend to be a little dry. It tends to be more like you're throwing a PowerPoint up on a screen and you're talking through the PowerPoint. And that's not as effective as having something that's more like a fireside chat where you're bringing people in to have conversation and actually talk about real life situations and solutions. So thinking about it from that perspective, I really recommend making a list of people that would be a great fit for the type of content you want to cover and bringing them in as a co-host or as a partner. This does a couple of things for you. One, it gives you someone to talk to interface with so that you aren't sitting on a screen by yourself and not feeling like you're making, the right connection with the audience or stumbling over your words. You have someone that can pick up the slack. Two, it gives you more promotional opportunities. Your webinar can then be promoted to that person's audience, their company's audience or their personal audience, because they're going to be on the episode with you. And that really comes into play, which we'll talk about on our next episode of this series, when you're talking about multi-purposing the content after the webinar is over. So that's it. That's another like tool in your back pocket. And it's also a great way to build relationships. So think about this from the perspective of you are wooing a new customer, and maybe you are creating a webinar on challenges in the industry, and they have mentioned that they have one of these challenges. Well, maybe you bring them on to talk about that and talk about some solutions, but also just talk about generally challenges in their industry. You're giving them a little bit of face time, you're creating that connection, and you're really showing them that you value them because you're putting them in front of your audience. That's one way that you can do this. You can also look at this for complementary vendors. This is how most of our clients use this particular concept. They bring complementary vendors on and they have conversations, or they create a roundtable with complementary vendors to talk about a particular topic. A great example of this would be like a recruiting panel to talk about challenges in recruiting and retention, and how different people from different industries are solving that challenge. What are they using to overcome that hurdle, and what's maybe not been effective to overcome that hurdle. So those are different ways that you can incorporate that guest host concept on a webinar. That also really makes for great content when you want to split it up later. Just saying. What should your format be? So there's a couple of different ways that you can run webinars. One is to do it live. Not my favorite. The second is to do an on-demand. So pre-record and make it look like it's live, and have a live chat going with your team and maybe someone from your partner's team. And the third way would be to just have it run on demand or as an automated webinar. So a live webinar is exactly what it sounds like. You are going live with your audience, and they are listening to you talk, and they can ask questions in real time. This works great if you really know you're going to have a lot of audience submitted questions. This is not my favorite way to run webinars, to be really, really clear. But if you know that there are going to be a lot of audience submissions that you're going to answer as a big chunk of the presentation, then live is kind of the way that you have to go. I would still recommend recording it so that you could repost it as an automated or on-demand webinar down the road. A automated webinar, this is how most of our clients run webinars. They pre-record, we pre-record with them, and then we clean it up so they don't have to worry about there being like hiccups or bumps in the road. And then we run it like a live webinar. So it goes live on a certain day and time. People are live on the episode, on the platform to participate. They can type comments in the chat, ask questions in the chat, and anyone that's an admin can respond. And we can also time out like automated handouts that can be distributed during the automated session and things like that. And then the sales team just does follow up afterward as needed. And then the other option would be that fully on demand, where you have certain days and times, or maybe it's just accessible at any time, and they can just like basically click and watch. The software that we use for that is Demio. I have tried so many, so many different types of software for webinars, and this is my favorite. It's been really effective for us. It gives us a lot of data. It runs the entire process. You can run any of those 3 types of webinars that I just outlined, and we can invite lots of guests to be part of it. We can increase and decrease our room capacity depending on what we need. And that's worked out very well for us in the past. So that is a platform that I truly love. I will add a link to it in the show notes if you want to check that out. But that is a platform that we've used for almost a year, and I have no intention of switching to something different. I've been very, very happy with the platform and with the platform itself. And I'll do a separate video just talking a little bit more about that and maybe walking you guys through some of the functionality, because we do have some upcoming webinars that we'll be setting up in there in the next couple of weeks. So thinking about that, and then just thinking about, how you want to present. So there are a couple of different options for presentations. One would be a panel, which is exactly what it sounds like. You have everybody on a screen, so maybe it's 4 people on the screen that each have, their little square, kind of like Zoom. Another option would be to have like the presentation up on the screen, which I would use sparingly. It's effective in certain situations, it's not effective in others. I do really think that the best performing content that we have is to have a moderator kind of in the background and then have 2 people as part of a fireside chat. I think when you get to a point where you have more than 2 people, it can sometimes come across as like it's hard for people to know when to speak because you're virtual, and it's hard, like it just makes it a little bit more challenging from a logistics standpoint, and it feels a little bit more awkward on the screen. I think that having 2 co-hosts or presenters and then maybe a moderator in the background typically works the best, but it depends on the situation. Like with everything else, it's not a perfect system. So there's lots and lots of different options. But you just want to plan that in advance and know what you want that to look like. We'll oftentimes jump on Zoom and record, although we do have other tools. Like I'm recording in one of our video tools right now. We have other platforms that we use. You can record right in Demio. I have a couple of clients that do that. I have a couple of clients that are just more confident in Zoom because it's an easy, known platform. So you have to kind of like play around with things and just know that if you're using technology to record that your guests are not familiar with, you are going to have to set up test sessions to get them comfortable with the technology before you actually do the recording or go live. So anyway, those are all of the things that you have to think about. That is the strategy. That's how I would plan the strategy, by kind of coming up with the concept and the topics, figuring out who those partners are that you could have co-host, figuring out that balance between video versus webinar content, and understanding that creating a plan for which of those topics you'll cover on video versus webinar, and then identifying what that format will be. I hope that's helpful for you. If you have questions, as always, reach out. My contact information is below and in the show notes, and I will talk to you soon.